Police almost missed it. A tiny movement caught on Bodycam. Just a nervous habit. At first, it looked meaningless. But when detectives slowed the footage down, they realized the suspect had been trying to hide something the entire time. And if one officer hadn't noticed that single detail, evidence connected to a far darker crime might have disappeared forever. Bodycam footage appears just after midnight. A quiet road, almost no traffic. The flashing lights of a patrol car illuminated a dark sedan pulled to the shoulder. The stop seemed routine, a minor lane violation. Nothing serious. The officer approached slowly, Bodycam recording every movement. Inside the car sat a man in his early 30s, both hands on the steering wheel, eyes forward, calm, almost too calm. But within seconds, the officer noticed something strange. The driver kept touching the same pocket, not once, not twice, but again and again. At first, it seemed like nervous behavior, but the Bodycam was capturing a pattern that would soon become impossible to ignore. "Good evening, sir. License and registration?" The man nodded. Slowly, his left hand reached toward the glove compartment, but his right hand drifted toward his jacket pocket. Just for a moment. Then he stopped himself. The officer watched carefully. Most drivers look nervous during traffic stops, but this felt different. Because every few seconds, the driver checked that same pocket, like he was making sure something inside hadn't moved, or worse, hadn't been noticed. Bodycam zoom on suspect. The officer asked another question. "Where are you coming from tonight?" "Work." The answer came quickly, too quickly. "And where do you work?" The suspect hesitated, only for a second, but it was enough. The officer noticed the pause, and then, the hand moved toward the pocket again. The officer stepped back toward his patrol car. From the outside, the stop still looked normal, but inside the patrol vehicle, another officer had been watching the live Bodycam feed, and he noticed something. "Hey, watch his right hand." The first officer looked back toward the car. Sure enough, the suspect was touching the pocket again, almost obsessively. That's when the officer made a decision. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to step out of the vehicle." The driver froze, just for half a second. Then he slowly opened the door, and as he stepped out, his hand drifted toward the pocket again, this time longer, like he was protecting something. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The officer's tone changed, more direct now, more cautious. The suspect raised his hands, but his breathing had already changed. Faster, shallow, and that pocket still looked heavy. Too heavy for keys, too bulky for a phone. Something was inside, something the suspect didn't want police to find. Bodycam close up. The officer began a pat down. Left side, nothing. Back pockets, nothing. Then he reached the right jacket pocket, the same pocket the suspect had been guarding all night. The moment the officer touched it, the suspect spoke. Quickly, too quickly. "That's just my wallet." But the officer had already checked the back pocket. That's where the wallet was, which meant the suspect had just lied. And now, everyone on scene knew it. The officer slowly reached into the pocket and pulled something out, a small black device. At first glance, it looked harmless, a portable hard drive, but the suspect's reaction said everything. The moment it appeared in the officer's hand, his entire face changed. His calm expression vanished. Now, he looked terrified. And officers immediately understood why. Because criminals don't panic over empty devices. They panic over what's inside them. The drive had a small piece of tape attached to it. 2 letters written in black marker, E.R. At the time, the letters meant nothing. But hours later, detectives would realize those initials had already appeared in another investigation. An investigation involving a missing person. Interrogation room footage. Several hours later, the suspect sat inside a small interrogation room. The hard drive sat on the table between 2 detectives. Silent, like it was waiting. "Do you want to explain what this is?" The suspect stared at the table. No answer. "You seemed pretty concerned about it earlier." Still nothing. Then finally, he spoke. "It's just work files." But the detective didn't believe him, because people don't panic like that over work files. And the suspect already knew something else. Something investigators would soon discover. The drive wasn't empty. It had been wiped. Evidence close-up digital forensic analysts began examining the device. At first glance, the storage appeared blank, every folder deleted, every file gone. But forensic software revealed something interesting. The drive had been wiped recently, very recently, which meant traces were still there. Fragments, pieces, digital ghosts of files that once existed. And as investigators began reconstructing those fragments, the truth slowly started to appear. Photos, messages, location data, and when detectives realized who those files belonged to, the room fell silent. Because the name attached to those files matched the initials on the tape. E.R., the same initials belonging to someone who had disappeared weeks earlier. But the most disturbing file appeared last. A video, short, grainy, recorded on a phone. Evidence playback. The footage showed a remote area outside the city. Dark, isolated, and standing in the frame was the suspect from the traffic stop. But he wasn't alone. Another figure stood just outside the camera's view. Investigators couldn't see their face, but they could hear their voice. A voice detectives had already heard before, because that voice belonged to a second suspect in the missing person investigation. And suddenly, that routine traffic stop had exposed something much bigger. Within days, search warrants were issued, phone records were analyzed, locations from the recovered files were investigated, and detectives began connecting the suspect to a network of communications tied to the case. All because of one mistake, one nervous habit caught on Bodycam, one small detail officers almost ignored. Bodycam replay investigators later reviewed the footage again, watching the suspect's hand drift toward that pocket. Again, and again, and again. A tiny movement, barely noticeable, but it was the mistake that exposed everything. Because sometimes, criminals don't get caught because of a major clue. They get caught because of the one detail they didn't realize the camera recorded. For more disturbing investigations and real crime stories, subscribe to Arcane Echo True Crime. Because sometimes, the truth behind a case is hiding in the one detail everyone else missed.